Canada's quarantine hotels weren't about your health. They were a bailout for the hotel industry. While hotels sat on thousands of empty rooms, travelers were forced into these abusive lockdown hotels, paying thousands out of pocket under threat of massive fines. Big hotels got a government-mandated stream of paying customers in direct talks with the feds. It wasn't public health, it was corporate rescue, as they sold your freedoms to save hotel profits. Let's dig in.
There's the cost of the test. There's the cost of the 3 hotel nights in a hotel rather, which will have to be paid in advance. That will amount to about $2,000. Of course, if there's a negative result after 2 days, the travelers will be able to return home, where they will be able to finish their 14-day quarantine under strict measures with increased surveillance. If ever they have a positive test result, they will be required to go to a government quarantine area where they will finish their 14 days of quarantine.
Every time we peel back another layer of this COVID circus, it gets more ridiculous. And that is especially true when we look at the government's use of forced isolation and quarantine hotels that crossed into charter-infringing territory, disregarding civil liberties, proportionality, and calling into question just how far authorities can push these boundaries during a public health emergency. This access to information response shows that the whole mandatory quarantine hotel scheme wasn't about health or well-being, but rather an idea cooked up by the Economic Development Office. And Canadians paid handsomely for all of it, nearly $400 million worth to be exact. The emails show that the star of this particular show was the Economic Development Minister at the time, Mélanie Joly. That's right, it wasn't the Minister of Health, not PHAC, that's the Public Health Agency of Canada. You know, the ones who are supposedly in charge of the federal health response. No, it was all about economics. Just not for everyone, because you can remember, well, small businesses across the country were ordered to close their doors and absorb losses indefinitely. Certain industries were suddenly being folded directly into government policy, guaranteed demand, government backing, and a steady stream of captive customers. While many Canadians were forced into government-approved quarantine hotels, some at taxpayer expense, others forced to pay thousands out of pocket, locked down for days, subjected to testing and tracking, and in disturbing cases, even sexually assaulted, all under the banner of public health, it now emerges that this program was developed in close collaboration with the Hotel Association of Canada. On March 30th, 2020, Joly's office reached out to the Public Health Agency of Canada directly to inquire about using hotels for quarantine, and then there's an entire redacted paragraph. It says that they're receiving a lot of questions from hotel chains, which are happy to support PHAC in any way if they can provide them context of their needs and how they're selecting and managing quarantine facilities. Now, here's where it gets especially telling. While all of this is being framed as Communications Strategy 101, Perry Bolt from the Public Health Agency of Canada sends an email noting that he has reconnected with the Hotel Association of Canada. The message reveals that the association had already spoken directly with Mélanie Joly and that the matter had now moved beyond the realm of simple communications coordination. Instead, they were looking for a more senior level discussion between the Hotel Association and the Public Health Agency of Canada. So internally, these quarantine hotels were escalating into high-level engagement between industry representatives and the federal minister in charge of economic development, raising obvious concerns about how this necessary public health measure was actually being shaped behind the scenes. This is because the hotels were sitting empty. In the blink of an eye after the declared state of emergency and terrifying people into staying home to save lives, tourism immediately stopped and business travel vanished effectively overnight. So what better way to fill those rooms than to force people into them under threat of fines or worse? These government emails show it wasn't a health measure. From the onset, the quarantine hotels were an economic bailout disguised as a pandemic response. The hotels get bailed out, the government looks like it's doing something, And everyday Canadians foot the bill for all of it, as usual. The COVID facade saw the greatest wealth transfer of our time. While ordinary people were told to stay home, shut down their small businesses, and accept sweeping restrictions for the sake of public health, the economic pain fell hardest on independent shops, restaurants, gyms, and family-run operations, many of which never reopened. Meanwhile, large corporations and well-connected industries were positioned to weather the storm or even profit from it. Massive stimulus, emergency programs, and policy decisions reshaped markets almost overnight, sending asset prices soaring, while small operators were buried in debt and uncertainty. And the quarantine hotels fit that pattern perfectly. While Canadians were being forced into these government-approved facilities at their own expense and sometimes demise, mandatory quarantine and COVID hotel jails conveniently funneled guaranteed business into an industry whose rooms had suddenly gone empty. The result was a familiar story of the pandemic era. Ordinary people were told to sacrifice, while insiders found ways to get paid. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. If you appreciate these kind of investigations, you can find more and support this work at rebelinvestigates.com. That's rebelinvestigates.com.